Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1406. The topic is mindset and the title is Juggling While Running. Oof. That doesn't sound too easy, right? So one of my clients, we were talking and they made this comment that life for them right now feels like they're trying to juggle but while running. And I thought that was a funny kind of statement in the sense that it is pretty true. We often try to juggle a lot of things. Like we want to be successful or move forward or progress in a lot of areas, and it all has to do it while we're moving forward, but also like kind of just running in life in the sense that you're trying to get ahead while also juggling all these things. And that was just a funny visual. We went through a fun conversation, and I thought it made like a pretty good podcast. But it's often how we feel in life is we're frantically juggling, but we also have to do that while running. You know, juggling and standing still is great, but you don't want to just grind all day and, you know, struggle through what you're doing just to maintain it. You want to try to move it all forward, right? We want to progress in all areas of life, not just stand there and try to juggle it all. So while we were talking, we kind of discussed what that would look like. And what we thought of like for a juggling pattern is you think like when somebody juggles, they throw an item from one hand to the other hand, then up in the air. One hand to the other hand, then up in the air. And that process is essentially what it looks like when we're trying to juggle what we're trying to do. We plan and schedule efforts. We actually have to do the efforts. We track the result of the efforts. And then we plan and schedule the next efforts. So that's the cycle. Plan and schedule, actually do it, track what happened, plan and schedule. And that just rotates and rotates and rotates. Now, the running part is moving forward. So when tracking the result of the efforts, if you compare the new results to old results, you have to ensure that you're going in the right direction, that there's some kind of progression between the results, right? So that's kind of what the process looks like. Now, there's a client I'm helping go through pain that they were experiencing when they were squatting. Their squat, they had come from kind of a CrossFit background, and they were doing a high bar squat, and with all the volume they had going on with trying to progress their strength, they were experiencing hip pain and then a pain in one of their knees. And they could back squat about 250 to 260 pounds, so it's female, and she had more strength in her. She believed she could always do more, but by 250 to 260 pounds, like her right hip would always hurt, her right knee would always hurt, and it just didn't feel safe to push forward anymore. So she was lucky in that she doesn't have, you know, any significant injury. She didn't tear a muscle. She didn't break anything. It just always felt uncomfortable. And since her sport doesn't really require like max effort squatting, because she's not trying to go to the CrossFit Games. She's just trying to be really good at CrossFit and look better and feel better about herself. You know, she's trying to build confidence and aesthetics through CrossFit. Now, if every time you try to squat heavy it hurts, it's not fun. You know, so you're not going to have a ton of confidence because it feels like you can't progress or that you're regressing because everything hurts now. So she was just kind of bummed out, but we started working together, and our process was to find the issue, isolate the issue, rebuild the issue. So what happened, we found out, was just basically there was weaknesses within the glutes. There was imbalanced weaknesses within the thighs, like trying to get everything stable in the knee. And she had really, really, really tight calves. And then her hips were forwardly rotated almost as like a regular way of life. So we had to really work on loosening up the hip flexors and doing a lot of balancing work throughout the lower body. So she went from doing high bar at 250 pounds to then doing a bunch of body weight and lightly loaded isolative single leg movements. So she didn't squat with a bar for a while because there was no need for it, because it wasn't Like squatting with a bar more wasn't going to help. It was trying to rebuild the foundation of what she was trying to squat with. So we had to do a lot of isolative work, a lot of single leg work. Now she could squat if she wanted to, but like in her CrossFit classes, but we didn't try to push that at all. So we were making sure that stayed light, maybe 135, maybe up to 185 at most, but nothing that would ever trigger pain. And we tried not to do it too often because it just got in the way of us being able to do the work we wanted to do. So as we got through that, we switched to low bar. Now, just yesterday, I had a podcast titled Why CrossFit Athletes Should Low Bar Squat, and you can listen more as to why I had her switch to a low bar squat there if you listen to that. But our first workout with a low bar squat, she squatted up to 165 pounds, had no pain, yay, but she said it felt really weird. She's like, I don't know if the bar is going to fall off of me. It just kind of feels like weird, like I'm trying to balance new positions underneath this weight, and it just feels kind of goofy. So I said, that's okay. We're just learning to do something new. So the first time you ride a bike, you can ride it and move forward, but it feels like you're going to fall off or fall over. So there's a lot of wobbles when you first learn to ride a bike. I said, right now you're wobbling. That's okay. We're moving forward. You just squatted 165 and you had absolutely no pain whatsoever. That's pretty amazing. So she was very excited, but she did feel awkward and she was kind of unsure, would this ever feel comfortable? Is this going to work for me? Then the second workout she did with the barbell, she squatted 185 pounds for multiple sets and multiple reps. So a little bit of an increase there, and it felt like a lot more comfortable. Third workout, she squatted 205 pounds. The fourth workout, she squatted 215, and she was then starting to feel a lot better and really progressing, really moving forward. She then was able to increase and squat 250 pounds for 3 reps. And it was all with no pain. That's pretty amazing. So the whole process took months, lots of juggling of new exercises and concepts while we moved forward. So yes, she had to move backwards in weight load used on the bar. We did have to get away from the bar and start rebuilding her weight on the squat bar. But the weight load was a sub-marker of progress. What we never moved backward in was pain. We always progressed with less and less pain. So the weight on the bar was a measurer of progress, but it wasn't the process. The main focus was getting her out of pain and never having to have pain. And that's something we never slid backward on. Now, in her workouts, she might have a little bit of an annoyance or have to make a small shift, or she was sore and kind of, could feel the muscles being tight or tired the next day or two. That's normal recovery process. But workout after workout after workout after workout was less and less and less pain to eventually having no pain whatsoever. That's what we really cared about. The weight we used on the bar was just whatever we had to do to make that process work. But what we never regressed on, what we continued to actually track, was the pain. So that was essentially the process we went through. That juggling pattern of, put like from hand to hand to air, to hand to hand to air, like the juggling part. Is we planned and scheduled our efforts. So we planned exercises, how many sets and reps she should do, and we scheduled when the workouts would be without her week, like through in her week. Then she actually did it. So the client actually followed through with the plan. Then we tracked the result by having the client report any pain issues, and then performance on the movements. Was she able to move up in weight? Did she not move up in weight? If she didn't move up, why didn't she move up in weight? So we talked through that. And then based on that feedback, we scheduled our next efforts. We planned our next efforts. So we made progressions, adjustments. We repeated the process. So we went through that. And while going through the process, we problem solved and figured out how to advance. We never did it just to do it. What were the results of us doing it? And were those results going in the right direction? Now that is how you can manage the feeling of juggling while running. So that's what you would want to do. If you're trying to manage your life, how can you do that? Is to pay attention to your juggling pattern. So, are you planning and scheduling your efforts? What are your planned actions? And when are you planning to do them? If you're just winging it, you might notice that you don't have any consistency and that you never have time. You never seem to have time to add in the efforts you need. Well, you need a plan. You need to assign time to those actions. If you're not creating planned efforts, you're likely not consistent, and thus you haven't been successful. If you're planning actions but you're not assigning time to them within your schedule, then you're likely not consistent and therefore you haven't been successful. And if you do plan them, if you do schedule them, are you actually following through? When it comes time to do it, are you doing it? If not, why? Do you lack motivation? Do you lack belief in your plan, like you're not really sure if it's going to work or not? Do you run out of resources? Why? If you're not following through, why? Try adjustments and see if it helps. So, for example, if somebody says, well, I'm going to work out after work, that might not happen too often because by the end of the day, you're too tired. Or, something came up and now all of a sudden you have to pay attention to that. If you notice you're not being consistent with working out after work, then work out ahead of work. You might be like, well, I can't get up that early. Go to bed earlier. It's not about getting up earlier. It's about going to bed earlier. Get your sleep, just get it earlier. So instead of sleeping from midnight to 6 a.m., sleep from 11 to 5. Boom, you have time to work out. If you're not following through, don't say your excuse, solve your excuse. Too often we say what the excuse is. Like we say what the reason, the obstacle, the challenge, the thing we're struggling to overcome. We say what it is, but we never solve what it is. Don't just say it. That doesn't help anything. You'll notice that every time you say your excuse, nothing changes. You still feel frustrated that you're not doing it. If you get what do you say it for? Do you want someone's approval that you're not doing what you want to do? You don't really give a shit what somebody else approves of. It's you. It's whether you approve of it. If you want to lose weight, if you want to gain muscle mass, if you want to get stronger, bigger muscles, better performance, whatever you want that because you want it. Whether somebody approves of the reasons why you're not doing it doesn't matter. You still have that desire inside of you and you're still frustrated you don't have it. So why are you saying your excuse? It does nothing. Don't say it, solve it. If you're trying to say your excuse, the only person you need to accept that is you. Have you accepted it? Probably not. So go solve the damn thing. It's good to recognize what is in your way, what your obstacle is, what you keep slamming your head against. Recognizing it is good because now you can know what to solve. But make sure you follow through and actually solve it. Then for the efforts you actually do put in, like if you do follow through with your plans and your schedules, are you doing it just to do it, or are you doing it knowing what you're getting from it? How do you know what you're doing? How do you know if what you're doing is getting you what you want? Like, are you tracking workout progressions? Are you tracking how often you adhere to your calorie and protein goals? You tracking body weight, photos, body fat scans? What is what you're doing for you? Is it leading where you want to go? Is it leading anywhere? And then the final step is to plan and schedule your next efforts. This is where you want to ensure you're actually moving forward, not just running in circles. What did what you did get you? That's the question. Do you want to move? Do you want to move forward with that? Do you want more of that outcome? Or maybe do you want better outcome for your efforts? Or a different outcome? What adjustments are you going to make? You have to compare the result of new efforts to the result of old efforts and ensure that the results are moving closer to the goal. Now, how you manage this process is up to you. You can write it out, think it out, track it in a chart, put it in your phone, mark it on a calendar. However you do it, you need something. If you wing it, you're likely not moving forward efficiently, and you're likely not moving forward in all areas. So remember, we're talking about juggling. You don't just juggle one ball. That's not really impressive, right? If we went to a circus and saw a clown juggling one ball, I don't think we would pay the money. And that's the way our life is. We don't get the opportunity to just juggle one ball at a time. We need to juggle all aspects of our life. That's a lot of information. It's a lot of efforts, a lot of outcomes to track. You can make it easier by writing it down, by tracking it, by making it visual. Think about what's important to you. What are a couple things that are important to you? Maybe like the healthiness and connectivity of certain relationships. That's like already probably more than one person, right? You might want to be successful at your work, so maybe you're paying attention to how you're doing at that. Maybe you do have some side physical goals, like nutrition parts, like that you have to pay attention to, training aspects you have to pay attention to. Maybe you have some other hobbies and other things you want to pay attention to. There's a lot in life that you're trying to plan and schedule efforts. You're trying to actually do the efforts. You're trying to see what you got from doing the efforts, and then was that any good, and should I do more of it, or should I make changes? There's a lot of things in life that we have to juggle. Making it visual, trying to write this stuff down, trying to track it in some way will help. So if you want to be successful in life while feeling like you're juggling and running, how can you best manage it? Well, you have to plan and schedule efforts. You have to actually do the efforts. You have to track the result of the efforts. Then you have to plan and schedule next efforts. And you have to do that while comparing new results to old results and ensure that the results are moving closer to your goal. Now, going through this, it might feel like, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I understand life's busy and I have to juggle a lot of things. I know that. Well, are you accounting for it? Are you actually making a process out of it? Or are you just winging it the best you can, and then you notice, week after week, month after month, you're in the same damn place? If you're going to grind every day, be stressed, put in effort, run around like a chicken with your head cut off. You want to grind forward. Grinding and standing still and staying the same is depressing. Who the hell wants to drive themselves nuts just to stay exactly the same? You might think that's the best you can do. Well, if that's your mindset, then probably it is. Maybe you can start to put some structure around your grinding, and all of a sudden you can see, hey, I'm putting a lot of effort into this, but maybe that's not 100% necessary. Maybe I can make some adjustments to that. There are very small examples, and you don't have to do any of these. I'm just saying them so that way you can understand what I'm talking about. But, if somebody spends 2-3 hours a week, doing grocery shopping. I've talked about using Instacart before. If you live in a place that's, Instacart's available to you, it's just an option, is you make a grocery order, and then you let somebody else grocery shop for you. You might think, oh, I can't afford that. It's not that expensive. With what you can do with an hour or two of your time, paying somebody else $10 to grocery shop for you is a pretty damn good deal. What about laundry? Maybe you do laundry every day. Does it really need to be done every day? Maybe you can do it every other day. Maybe you do it 2 days in a row and skip the third day. Try to figure out if what you're doing can be done more efficiently. All of a sudden, you have more time. that magical, wonderful stuff that we always try to have more of. You have to refine what you're doing to find time. There's no extra time. You can't just keep doing what you're doing and then get more time. You have to improve what you're doing. Be better with what you're doing. So if you want to move forward in life, you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to put a little bit of effort into the kind of like larger picture view of your life. You probably work hard. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably work very hard. If you're not getting something forward from your work, don't work more. Work better. Actually sit down and plan and schedule efforts. And then check and see if you're actually following through with them. It's amazing how many people I talk to who have the time to work out, who have the resources and time to eat better, but they just don't. There are people who struggle to have time. There are people who struggle to have the right resources and right things available to them. That's a category of people that have problems. But there also is a category of people who they have what they need and they're just not doing it. And that's certainly a problem. So plan and schedule your efforts. Track and see if you're actually following through with them. And then see what the result of them are. If you're active, you're like, well, I go to the gym, as often as I can. I try to eat healthy. I just never seem to see any difference from it. Well, then holy crap. Stop doing that. Whatever you're eating, whatever you're training, stop it because it's not getting you anything. If you're not seeing any results, for the love of God, try something different. I don't care if you try to do, jumping jacks in the handstand position, just do something different. If what you're doing is getting you the same and you don't want the same, stop doing the same damn thing. Track the result of what you're doing. If you don't see a difference or a progression over time, then you have to try something different. You have to plan and schedule new efforts, different efforts. But that's the pattern we have, is plan and schedule efforts. Actually do the efforts. Track the result of the efforts. Then plan and schedule new efforts. Everyone is somewhere in that spectrum stuck, or you're grinding through that part, or it seems frustrating, or it seems hard to overcome. Everyone is somewhere in that pattern. What's neat is not everyone's in the same place, which means that some people figured out how to solve each place. You just need to learn how each person did their place, so that way you can do all the places, right? So if you're stuck in the scheduling and planning part, well, how does that person over there do that? Maybe they struggle with actually following through, but they actually planned it and they actually scheduled it. And then when it comes, they just don't do it. And you're like, oh man, if I could have the time to do it, I would crush it, Everybody is somewhere in the spectrum. But what's awesome about that is every part of the spectrum has been solved. Somebody knows how to solve your problem. You just have to go find that person, or read that book, or watch that video. You just have to go find the information, find the solution. It's out there. What's awesome about my job is I've talked to enough people, and I've worked with thousands of people, that I know that everyone has solved each part of this process. What's great is I talk to a crap load of people, so I actually know how they solve all of them. So it's pretty cool. It's fun, because then I can be a lot more efficient in my life. Does this mean that I do everything right? Hell no. Nope. I wish. But it does allow me to problem solve better. So the more people you talk to, the more resources you look into, the more you learn, the better you'll do. So I encourage you to kind of think through this process and say, okay, where am I struggling? Where am I not following through? My planning and scheduling my efforts. Maybe I plan what I want to do, but I don't schedule the time for it. If I'm doing those things, am I following through? If I'm not following through, why not? If I'm planning and scheduling and I'm following through, but I just don't seem to be getting anything. Like when I look at the results of my efforts, it just doesn't seem to move forward. well, then you got to try new efforts. But that's the juggling pattern. Plan and schedule efforts. Actually do the efforts. Track the result of the efforts. And plan and schedule new efforts. So look through that process. See where you are. Try to refine, try to improve where you are. And then the running part of it all, making sure you're moving forward, is just when you're tracking the result of new efforts, compare them to old efforts, and ensure that the results are moving closer to the goal. It's sounds very simple, but a lot of people do the efforts, but they don't ever compare. And they just basically are just churning through effort after effort after effort, but they're not actually moving forward. So, this is the process. Can it be done? Hell yes. People are successful in each part of this process. You just have to put it all together. Okay? Well, if you need help or if you think I can help you with anything, always reach out. Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. I'm always happy and excited to help if there's anything I can ever do. Or I can point you in the right direction and get you a nice resource, whatever you might need. But just reach out if you need any help. Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. Awesome. Well, thank you for listening. I hope that if you like today's podcast, you consider sharing it. If the podcast has been helpful in your life, we'd like to share it with more people so we can be helpful in their life. However you share it is great, whether that's on a social media post or that's in a conversation with a friend. Just if you share it, I really appreciate it, and I'm sure they'll really appreciate it as well. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, the people who financially support the podcast, which you can now do on our website at www.brutalironjim.com. The podcast is well over $1,000 for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day, and I'd love to keep it for free. And that's all thanks to the people who donate to the podcast, so we can all thank them that I've been able to keep doing this for free and keep doing it every day. Now, if you do give it our website, there's options for one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation. However you give, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you. Also, if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Jim. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalironjim@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.